the Madman! Welcome to the Descent of Dragons. While I was at BlizzCon, lots of cards got revealed. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Galakrond cards that were revealed and cover all 12, I believe, of them. If you saw my first video, you already know about the Rogue Galakrond card. 7 mana, Battlecry, draw 1 card, it costs 0, invoke twice, and then it draws 2, invoke 4 times in all, and you draw 4 cards, they cost 0, equip a 5/2 claw. The hero power becomes add a lackey to your hand, and that turns out to be a common pattern among every single Galakrond. 1, 2, 4, and the last one also gives you a 5/2 claw, and the 5/2 claw at the end is a really big deal because you basically get an Arcanite Reaper, which costs 5, and you can play the Arcanite Reaper in quite a lot of classes that you normally wouldn't have weapons in anyways, such as Warlock, such as Priest. Considering the value proposition of Rogue, drawing 4 cards is worth Sprint, having 4 cards be worth 0, with let's say an average value of 3.5 mana is worth 14. Arcanite Reaper is worth 5, the 5 armor is worth 1. You add the bundling effects of all of those together, and then you like roughly get a value of 28 mana if you get a fully invoked Galakrond for Rogue out. And the hero power is a substantial upgrade on the base Rogue hero power, especially later in the game. But let's take a look at the Warlock variation. A very different playstyle. Galakrond the Wretched for Warlock summons 1, and then 2, and then 4 demons, giving you the 5/2 claw at the end. You invoke twice to upgrade each time. The hero power summons 2 1/1 imps. This plays into a very different playstyle, and indeed, the deck that showcased the Warlock Galakrond was a zoo type deck. A lot of the Warlock invoking cards reward you having a big board of minions, which is generally the zoo playstyle. The Priest Galakrond deck looks tailored towards a control style. Galakrond the Unspeakable, Battlecry, destroy 1, 2, 4 random enemy minions, and equip a 5/2 claw if you get it invoked all the way. And then your hero power changes to add a random priest minion to your hand, which is a big value generation card over time, rewarding a value control grind them out deck. So we needed to see the end result before we looked at all the invoke. And of course, it's really important to see all these hero powers because not only do you progress Galakrond, but you also get 1 usage of this hero power alongside it. And people look at these Galakrond cards and look towards Knights of the Frozen Throne with the Death Knights, and they're like, man, infinite value again, huh? But it's very different this time because the hero powers, they're all stuff you would pay 1 or less mana for. Now for the Priest and the Warlock one, I definitely say that if you're playing Galakrond Priest or Galakrond Warlock, you have a control Galakrond deck for Priest, or you have a swarmy Galakrond Warlock. For Rogue, it's a little bit more variable because it's a mix of value, tempo, possibly control. All of this has to be taken in mind as we evaluate the invoke cards for these classes. And I usually start with the class ones, but one of the really interesting effects of the invoke having 5 different possibilities is that the neutral minions with invoke are very different and quite interesting to look at. Initially, when I looked at Shield of Galakrond, it looked like just a generic card. Your basic 5 mana 4/5 taunt, and then Battlecry, invoke Galakrond. Sure, some Galakrond decks may or may not play that right, but upon seeing other Galakrond cards, it looks like this is really quite a premium neutral card. In Warlock, you get a 4/5 taunt with 2 1/1, so it's like a 5 mana 6/7, plus you progress your Galakrond. In Priest, you get a 5 mana 4/5 taunt and you get a card. And in Rogue, you get a 5 mana 4/5 taunt and you get a lackey. Probably a good time to mention the new lackey while we're talking about Galakrond for Rogue. Draconic Lackey can now be generated from the lackey generators. 1 mana 1/1, Battlecry, discover a dragon. A value-oriented lackey. Most of the lackeys so far have been tempo. An assertive card you can just play, because dragons are minions and you usually just want to play, and usually the dragons are pretty big, so it gives you a nice late game card. Certainly near the beginning of the game you probably won't want to generate Draconic Lackey, but near the end of the game, Draconic Lackey will probably be one of the better lackeys that you can get. The other neutral invoke card that has been revealed so far is Devoted Maniac, a 4 mana 2/2 rush, Battlecry, invoke Galakrond. So this one certainly looks a lot less exciting compared to the 5 mana 4/5 of Taunt. A 2/2 with Rush is basically deal 2 damage to a minion. So if that's worth about 1 mana, then even though tacking on the 1 mana effect of invoking Galakrond, be it summoning 2 1/1s or getting a lackey or getting a priest minion, it doesn't just quite add up to 4. If I'm very broadly saying that invoking Galakrond is worth about 2 mana, that would mean Shield of Galakrond has a 2 mana effect with your 4/5 taunt. Pretty sweet. On the other hand, Devoted Maniac, if you value Invoke Galakrond at 2 mana, then this is a 2 mana 2/2 rush card, which is pretty mediocre / bad. I feel like this is the type of card that just to prevent people from typing in Invoke and putting in literally every card that says Invoke, some of them will be on the less good side. It would be hard to see that invoking Galakrond would be that good to put in this card into it, but if people really want to invoke Galakrond, maybe. Now looking at the class-specific invoking of Galakrond, we have Seal Fate. So again, most of my evaluations of these cards are going to be based off of my belief that invoking Galakrond is worth about 2 mana. So I'm mentally just subtracting 2 mana from the cost because I'm including the effect, I'm including the bundling, I'm including the upgrading of Galakrond. Seal Fate, for 3 mana, deal 3 damage to an undamaged character, invoke Galakrond. So if I think invoke Galakrond is worth 2 mana of the card, then it's 1 mana, deal 3 damage to an undamaged character, which seems pretty solid. So I would say, yeah, this seems like a good card to put into your Galakrond Rogue deck. You have Praise Galakrond for Rogue. It's 1 mana, give a minion +1 attack, invoke Galakrond. This is an interesting case where the effect is so minor that the bundling rule doesn't really come into play, because giving a minion +1 attack is not really a card that would ever exist. It's like such a minor card that it used to be a spare part. So I can't just give this +2 mana and say like, oh wow, that's a great deal. This should be worth 2, but it's only 1. Instead, you have to like break it down and look at this card and be like, well, you're basically getting a lackey for it, and you're getting a minor effect on top of that +1 attack. Compare it with Sinister Deal from Warlock, which is Discover a Lackey, and I think you'll find Praise Galakrond to be roughly on par with that. +1 attack can sometimes be the difference between a trade and not. There are slight downsides in that you can't just play this proactively. You can't play this on 1 because you need to target a minion. And if you don't have a minion, you have to target the opponent's minion, which is a downside. By the way, the low mana cost on this might make it so that it's a good miracle type of card. jnZaneHD Auctioneer, Praise Galakrond, do some other things. Why does Miracle come into mind? Because Umbral Skulker exists. It seems like along with invoking cards, there's also Invoke Lovers in each class, where they reward you for invoking. And the Umbral Skulker looks really good. 4 mana 3/3 for Rogue Battlecry. If you've invoked twice, add 3 coins to your hand. 4 mana 3/3, draw 3 cards is obviously insane. Now the coins, you could say, aren't as good as a card unless you're playing jnZaneHD Auctioneer. Then the coins are actually better than cards because you can trade the coins for cards and get mana on them the same turn. Umbral Skulker, as well as Galakrond the Nightmare, seems to me to set Rogue towards a path of some sort of miracle / combo deck. Because if you draw 4 cards of Galakrond the Nightmare and they cost 0, there's a decent chance that your combo is going to suddenly work. Yeah, it looks like they have given Rogue the tools to try the jnZane miracle thing yet one more time. But that's not the only direction. 3 coins in general is just a good addition, and if you're playing an Invoke deck, you're going to put an Umbral Skulker in your deck because it's basically a 1 mana 3/3. So as I have said, I'm looking forward to a Rogue valued deck, finally. But maybe it's not a valued deck. Maybe it's a combo deck. We'll see. Next, let's take a look at the Priest Galakrond deck. It looks like the Priest deck is more geared towards control, and we can see that with the Time Rip as well, being a very solid control card. 5 mana, destroy a minion, invoke Galakrond. Back in my day, for 5 mana, destroying a minion was pretty powerful, and it was the Rogue class identity. Imagine Priest, the class of situational minion destruction, getting a unsituational destroy a minion. And you get to invoke Galakrond with it, which is, of course, just adding a Priest card to your hand. So it's a 5 mana to get card advantage card while also pressing your Galakrond. That's really, really strong. I must admit that the invoke for Priest is a little bit less exciting than other ones because getting random Priest minions doesn't seem that valuable towards the Priest ghouls and all. But it's a good card, and if you're going to try to invoke Galakrond, you'll put Time Rip in your deck. Fate Weaver is the big invoke payoff card for Priest, and again, it rewards control directions with a lot of cards in their hand. 4 mana, 3/6 dragon, battle cry. If you've invoked twice, reduce the cost of cards in your hand by 1. Huge draw into invoking as Priest for the combo Priest player, as well as the control Priest player, just having a bunch of cards in your hand. Here's a quick, cool combination you could do with Fate Weaver. Valen, Vivid Nightmare, 6, 8, 10. Holy Smite, Holy Smite. Your Holy Smites each deal 16 damage, so pow, that's 32 damage. Dragonblight Cultist is a card that looks really bad until you really put all of the pieces together, and then it looks really good. You look at it, it's like 3 mana, 1/1. Battlecry, invoke Galakrond, gain +1 attack for each other friendly minion. But what, if you play it on an empty board, it's like what, just a 3 mana, 1/1, right? Wrong. Because invoking the great Galakrond immediately gives you 2 1/1s. Dragonblight Cultist comes into play, minimum 3/1. So a 3 mana for a 3/1 and 2 1/1s is already quite good, but that's the baseline for it. If you have 2 other minions in your hand, you're getting a Magma Rager and 2 1/1s. So 5/3 in terms of stats added up, plus progressing your Galakrond looks pretty good. Plus, that combos so well of Fiendish Rites. Fiendish Rites, 3 mana, invoke Galakrond, give your minions +1 attack. You might look at that and be like, it's kind of like Savage Roar. If you have a huge board and then you play it, you can swing the board, you can do a bunch of damage. But Fiendish Rites actually is playable even with no cards on the board. Not great if you play it with no cards on the board. You only pay 3 mana to get 2 2/1s. But hey, sometimes it's nice that you can just do that. Best done if you have some eggs on the board, some other minions, you're swarming them, you play your Fiendish Rites. This card, I'm going to say, is on the weaker side of Invoke. It's like 1 mana, give your minions +1 attack, which is like, that's not too exciting. So I think it's a card that may or may not appear in this build, but worth thinking about. And the cards that make you want to think about this would be the Invoke payoff. Other than Galakrond, you have Veiled Worshipper, 4 mana, 5/4, Battlecry. If you've invoked twice, draw 3 cards. That is a lot of cards. Drawing 3 cards is worth about 5 mana. A 5/4 is worth like maybe 3.5 mana. You put them together, you have the bundling effect. This card is worth like 9 mana, and you're only paying 4 mana for it. Ridiculous deal. So as you can see, even though we've only seen 1/3 of the set, less than 1/3 of the set so far, and we don't know what the Warrior Galakrond or the Shaman Galakrond do, in order to showcase that Galakrond can be pretty good, we've already seen some of the good stuff. Galakrond relies on having a critical mass of good invoke cards, similar to Cthulhu, requiring a critical mass of Cthulhu supporters. Every single invoke card that we see from here on out, especially if there's a neutral one, could prove to be a very big effect in the viability of these Galakrond decks. They already look pretty solid. So that was the Galakrond special. Stay tuned for the other cool cards that were revealed early. And there are a lot of them.